Hey guys, Mike here, and I just wanted to drop in real quick and let you know that I messed up last week when I said we'd be reviewing The Martian this week. I goofed. We're actually reviewing The Martian next week. Blame it on the alcohol. Your ears didn't deceive you, I'm just a dumb little boy. Anyway, without further ado, here's our drunken review of Spotlight.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week, we're reviewing Spotlight.
Spotlight, more like spot-on performances. I'm sorry.
Welcome to the 8th episode of How Many Fingers, featuring two guys getting tanked and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And this week we are drinking Lagunitas IPA.
Ooh.
Joe's favorite.
Yeah, and there's no bottle opening sound because we fucked up the first time. So you're just going to have to live with that.
It's the curse of the IPA. It's going right to our head already.
Ugh. But as I said in our trashed first take, it tastes like garbage. I'm not an IPA guy.
Joe's not about those hops.
I don't like those hops.
Hops don't like the hops.
Yank a hops, boy.
Coming to you live from Times Square on New Year's Eve.
New Year's Rockin' Eve. It's Ryan Seacrest.
Oh, hey, Carson, how's it going?
Oh, Carson, it's not Seacrest.
He's right here. We're laughing because we're recording this weeks in advance, and it's nowhere near New Year's Eve. But when you're listening to this, if you're listening to it on the opening day, it is New Year's Eve for you. So Happy New Year to you, and I hope you keep all your resolutions. And I
hope you walk the dog more often.
Yeah,
that is a top resolution. Gotta walk that dog more. Okay, so
this is it. This is it. This is the year you're gonna quit smoking.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get Brian back. You lost 10 pounds. You're just gonna show him that fit new beach bod. It's gonna be great.
Melissa, this is your year. All right, so this week we're reviewing the oh boy,
critically.
We've got a few drinks in us, and this week we're reviewing the critically acclaimed drama Spotlight. And
according to IMDb, the plot description, because we're tired of writing our own descriptions, so thank you, IMDb. Spotlight is the true story of how the Boston Globe uncovered the massive scandal of child molestation and cover-up within the local Catholic archdiocese, shaking the entire Catholic Church to its core. So that's the movie.
Yeah. So where did you see this, Mike?
Movie theater.
Church.
We had a showing at my local parish. I saw it movie theater by myself. Not a lot of people there. Pretty
AMC.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
I think so. Yeah. What about you? Did you go to the theaters for this one?
I did.
You did?
I ran 2 blocks that away and saw it. There's a 2-theater movie theater that way.
Oh wow, one of the small ones.
They build themselves as like it's usually expensive, but I went there for like a matinee. They build themselves as like a non-profit movie theater, which is kind of weird. Like from the people of Doylestown, a non-profit movie.
Donating the profits to something, or
I don't know, like donate me some viewing time. Like, donate me some movies.
What do they charge? What is the admission there?
I don't remember. I remember thinking it was kind of. I went with my friend Joe, and I remember thinking it was like an outrageous price. I think it was like 12 or 13 or something.
Oh, so even.
But I went to see it at a matinee and it was like 7. So
it's
not bad. It was me and a ton of old people, the old people of Doylestown, and
yeah, there was definitely an older population when I went to see it in AMC.
But so Spotlight, I don't even want to get into my opinion of it yet, but I want to talk about the director real quick. So this is directed by Tom McCarthy. So just to catch you up, he's done The Station Agent, which, funny story,
Never saw it.
it's pretty good. When we were filming Less Than Three, our film, Jordan and I had to entertain some old guy when we were filming like one scene at like that. Was that a train station? Like had like a tower in the background.
Yeah.
And he came up, and some old guy came up to us, and he was kind of giving us shit, kind of like trying to like tell us stories and stuff. And he told us that the station agent actually filmed a scene there too.
Oh wow!
So we
At
were
that train station.
Yeah.
Oh damn!
So because it's based in New Jersey, so we were there when we were. It was pretty good. Yes, Peter Dinklage was there. The Tyrion Lannister.
So he had something to do with Michael Clayton. I'm seeing. No, was
he did The Station Agent, The Visitor, which I think that was like Oscar nominated. Win-Win, one of my personal favorites. And the year before this,
what is Win-Win?
Regrettably, Win-Win's actually good. It's like Paul Giamatti, and he's like a wrestling coach, and he's in Dead. It's very good.
I haven't seen like anything in his filmography. Literally nothing besides Spotlight.
Okay, and the year before this, I think, regrettably, he did The Cobbler.
With the Adam Sandler?
Yes, one of those films that Adam Sandler like is making exclusively for Netflix.
Oh, God.
Like that's what he directed last year. Oh, but get this. I'm almost done. Also, a 10-episode character arc where he was an actor on our beloved HBO's The Wire.
He's the reporter.
He played Scott Templeton.
Yes.
Yeah. In season 5 was the journalist who fabricates the serial killer.
Did you
story.
you finished
Yes,
The Wire?
yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah. So he's the guy that.
So I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, that's that's pretty cool.
It Gets Better is his.
Right. Yeah.
From The Cobbler to Spotlight, It Gets Better.
So I mean, on top of that, I mean that's the director, and then we have the phenomenal ensemble cast: Mark Ruffalo, Michael Keaton, Rachel McAdams, Liev Schreiber,
Stanley Tucci.
Roger Sterling,
What is his name?
John Slattery,
Yes, yeah.
and Stanley Tucci. And that's the beauty. I want to jump right in. That's the beauty is that there's no like protagonist really.
Yeah.
It's like this is like one of the best ensemble casts I've seen in a film maybe ever. I'm gonna set that up right there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also because the way the story is written is in a way that they're not really focusing on any one character. There's no real character study necessarily going on. It really is completely devoted to this story of, the Boston Globe uncovering this crazy, massive global, scandal of cover-up, basically. And I think I really like that, the fact that it because especially when you have so many characters and you try to like delve into their, little character stories, it ends up, muddling the film.
Right.
Whereas, this is like, we don't really care what they're doing. It's the story. It's about anything related to the story. And I really like the focus of the film. That was one of my major likes about this movie. And obviously just even though there wasn't a lot of character study, the acting was still phenomenal in all their parts.
Yes. And here's what I'm trying to figure out is I haven't been able to figure out who's like top billed necessarily, whether it's like Mark Ruffalo or Michael Keaton, but what I want to know is when it comes down to the Oscars, because this will be at the Oscars, I can guarantee that if there's any sort of acting nominations, like who's going to be up for Best Actor? Or is anybody going to be up for Best Actor? Or is it going to be like both of them hypothetically up for like supporting actor?
I kind of feel like this might be the one where no one actually gets nominated from it just because of the types of performances that they are. Because I think the Oscars, they sort of tend to trend towards like, an actor playing something outside
protagonist.
Or
they trend to,
or playing something outside of himself, even if it's not necessarily like the greatest role. Like I think of like Jonah Hill when he got that, like because it was just, it was a change for him that excited people who were voting for it. Where I don't see a lot of these performances maybe really exciting anybody as much as I thought that they were all good. But it was almost like they were good in a way that they didn't try to take away. Like no one really overpowered the movie. They were all kind of like playing like a team in a way. But,
I don't know.
I mean, who would you nominate if you had
Mark Ruffalo?
Mark Ruffalo.
He was the best performance I've seen this year.
Yeah.
I thought. I think people thought he was like a little too much, but I was like, I was in it. Like,
I was just gonna say, I thought he had the most complete performance, where you felt it in like every motion that he made. Like, just like the little way he talks, the
Yeah,
little like
yeah.
weird things he does with his lips when he's talking. Like
I mean, I wasn't super familiar with the cast when I walked in, but it wasn't halfway until like I was through the film that I was like, oh shit, that's Mark Ruffalo. Because he like portrays like so accurately. He almost could have been like Oscar Isaac or something. Like he like looked younger. He like, again, I'll talk about this later, but the entire aesthetic of the film is so late 90s, early 2000s. He has like, he looked like, I could just like place him as like people that I knew, you know, in the 90s, like
Yeah,
my uncle
yeah.
almost, like he looked like kind of like hairy, kind of like hunched over, like kind of like 90s guy, like kind of like, he was just so real. It
yeah,
was
and just
like,
even like the way like when he's running to like get documents and stuff like that, like he just had a very urgent sense about him that was good. But I mean, I think if I had to pick one, I might pick Liev Schreiber for supporting actor, just because I thought it was a quieter performance.
Did I say that wrong? I said Schreiber.
I have no idea how to say it. Schreiber sounds like it might be all right.
Right, yeah. He's like the least recognized, I think, out of this whole cast.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
did-
I've seen him in a bunch,
Right,
but he's
yeah.
never really like stolen the show as anything. He's always been good, but I thought this was definitely a great role for him, just
Right.
being the quiet, the new boss who's been transferred from Miami.
standout scene. I mean, this goes hand in hand with the what I was saying about Mark Ruffalo was when when he clashes with like Michael Keaton, and then like that like keeps going, and he's so upset, and he's kind of like a loner. He's so upset that he like goes over like Rachel McAdams' character's house, and they go out into like that kind of fire escape, and he like vents. Like
That felt very real.
tears
yeah.
in my eyes.
Yeah.
This is a film. I don't know. I feel like I've seen quite a few films now with this podcast, and like I'm super easy to make cry, and I still haven't. Or like up until this film, I hadn't. But like this film really got to me.
The first tears from How Many Fingers?
Right. But yeah, I mean, like, let's dive into the fucking aesthetic of this film. Because what I want to say right off the bat, not right off the bat, we're like kind of in this. Okay. What I admired most about this film is that it is not sensationalized at all.
Oh, no.
Like, every time I've spoken about this film to other people, I get questions like, oh, who played the priest? Like, that was my mom. Like, or like something along the lines of like, are there any like explicit scenes? And that's me censoring our friend Kevin, who is asking if quote unquote if any priest hung dong during this film. But again,
Although, I mean, I was going to say before, the two, I think it's just two scenes where Rachel McAdams' character and Mark Ruffalo's character are interviewing victims from these priests in the past. And, I mean, they get pretty explicit there. And I was going to say, just those, like, small, like, bit roles that those
great,
actors were fucking incredible. Just, like,
they like
that was when I felt like I was feeling the most, was especially the one younger guy, because there's the one guy that's the gay guy.
Right. He was like a little chubbier kind of.
Yeah, and he was kind of led up to a room by like a smaller smaller,
like a street
a
priest.
younger, a younger, more hip priest. And the other guy was just was molested more when he was really young by an older priest who took him out to get ice cream.
Right. He's the one with like the heroin.
Yeah, and he's kind of relaying his story to Mark Ruffalo's character, and it just gets very graphic.
Right.
But in not tasteful is not the word, but it's appropriate for it. It makes you feel what you're supposed to feel given the the scope of the story and how serious it actually is.
Yeah, but back to my point about not sensationalizing the film is that McCarthy doesn't feel like he needs to use like flashbacks or like explicit imagery for like cheap thrills or to convey something that he's not able to do in like the present time of the film. And I think that's so refreshing, and it's like to see a film do this, and it totally like matches the aesthetic of like the ensemble cast in the way of everything's cut and
Well, it
filmed.
matches the story too, because there's the one scene where they're meeting with the lawyer. I forget what that actor's name is.
He's great too.
Yeah, he's good too.
Everybody's so perfectly cast.
And they're asking, like, you know, he was someone who had negotiated with some of the victims on their behalf with the Catholic Church to get settlements for them.
Right.
And he was basically talking about how, you know, in many of these cases, the victims don't come forward until many, many years later, sometimes until the statute of limitations is already up, and it's really just kind of a publicity settlement at that point, which I think fits with the fact that, you know, it's kind of something that for the rest of the world has kind of moved on. It's been years and years and years since some of this stuff has happened, but for these people, it's very, very real, and it's something that's affected their entire lives.
Oh, definitely.
I also thought, just in terms of aesthetic, it really captured just the feel of Boston, and they have a few lines that reference that too. How Boston is just it's kind of like a small town, even though it's a big city. And I think it would have been really easy. This is just another tip of the hat to the ensemble cast. It would have been really easy to have some horrible Boston accents in there. You know, fucking Pope.
I know. I think somebody asked me, they're like, "Oh, is Mark Wahlberg in it?" or whatever. And I also thought, like, it is like there's a like that was the thing. I was like, I don't know whether I do like this or I don't like this about like this film, but it isn't like heavy on Boston kind of.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely the environment where Boston is. It's like a tough city, and it's poor, and it's extremely Catholic, and that plays into everything, and it's like the whole Michael Keaton, like, we grew up in Boston kind of thing, but nobody had that accent. It wasn't like Ben Affleck's The Town, like, Claire, here's some oranges, meet me in Florida.
Dear Claire.
Dear Claire.
I mean, there were some phrases that Michael Keaton said, but again, it fit with, because I mean, I've met people up in Boston that are literally like, "Are you kidding me? That's how you talk?" Like, So you do have to let that out a little bit, and I thought Michael Keaton did, I think, the best job.
But it was
with
light,
the accent.
though. It was still light.
Yeah, but there's still some phrases where it's just undeniably like that, you know, that long whatever comes out.
And then, I'm sorry, but also. Rachel McAdams, I was like, why does she not have any trace? And then they go into her story. She's not actually from there. And again, it's a well-established newspaper. People are traveling to go there and write there. The Boston Globe is a pretty acclaimed newspaper. So I mean, it's reasonable that people wouldn't have a thick accent.
Yeah, and then even Lee Schreiber's character comes from the Miami Herald, I guess it would be, or whatever. From down there. Stanley Tucci, I think he mentions that he's not really, says he's Armenian or something, so he doesn't really have like the whatever accent.
Yeah. So another thing that I wanted to bring up is I don't know. I think I really want to get into like gushing about this film because this is the best film that I've seen this year. I personally think this has a real good shot at Best Picture. I think this is not only Oscar bait, but I think this is maybe the best thing that's going to come out this year.
See, I mean, I feel that personally. Like, if this, you know, if the Oscars were today and this walked away with Best Picture, I would not be upset at all.
Right.
But I think going back to like the non-sensationalism of it, I worry how that plays with
the cinematography and everything.
The Academy, yeah, because it's not really an artistic movie at all.
Right.
It's very basic in terms of the cinematography and the storytelling, which I think benefits the film. But I think sometimes with Best Picture winners, like I think of stuff like 12 Years a Slave and stuff like that, where they have these like, you know, moments in the movie that are just very sensationalized, like in 12 Years a Slave, like the whipping scene, like that's the scene that everyone thinks about from that movie. Whereas this one didn't really have, because they didn't use flashbacks, because they didn't have some, you know, rape scene, there aren't a lot of scenes that you can kind of point to and be like, where someone would be watching and say, okay, this is the Best Picture, you know?
Right.
Whereas, I mean, I feel it was probably, I think Ex Machina might be the best movie I've seen this year. I know you haven't seen that
really?
yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is definitely a close second in terms of just everything felt very polished all over.
Oh, definitely.
But I worry that sensation or non-sensationalism might hurt it with voters. But then again, we brought up, or you told me before we started recording, it's got a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. So maybe I'm wrong, and it is playing well with everybody.
I think it's a critic's favorite. I think we've literally, and this is playing into the history of the Oscars and everything, the history of film in general. I think we've witnessed like the only film about like investigative journalism that can compete with like films like All the President's Men, or even like Citizen Kane, which is about investigative journalism, or that's what drives the plot line. And I know that sounds cliche, but it is. But anyway, I do.
Which is cool, because it's not, when you think about the Catholic Church scandal, it's not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind.
Journalism, yeah. Right.
Yeah, like, I think, right off the bat, if a studio is looking at, all right, we need to make a movie about the scandal, like, it's going to be obviously something more sensational. So it's nice that they took this approach.
But it's a love letter to investigative journalism.
Yeah.
In the age, that's the other thing, is it's really not that far off from where we are. Like, it's like we were alive during this time. It was what, 2000? It was 2000.
2000. I think it starts 2000, and then the World Trade Center attacks happen during the course of the movie. So,
but yeah, and I think I don't know. It's a film that takes place on. It's kind of like a love letter to investigative journalism, because it kind of like shows like in a time where we live in like clickbait, BuzzFeed bullshit. It's kind of a love letter to a time where it was like, you really had to get your facts straight.
Oh yeah, and that's a big part of the plot is I'm not sure what the other we didn't mention him in the ensemble cast. There's the I don't even know his character. I guess Brian James. Yeah, Brian James looks like the actor. The fourth guy on the investigation team, not Rachel McAdams, not Mark Ruffalo, the guy with the mustache. One of the ways when they're investigating the priests is they find that they're not yearbooks, but they're basically directories of all the priests and of the diocese and whatever, where they were stationed and what their status was, and they found that on priests that they knew actually molested people, the year after they would be listed as on sick leave, or there was another designation that they found for them. So they're going through, and they decide to work backwards and basically go through all these directories and find priests that moved around a lot and that were eventually placed on sick leave, and then trace those back and try to find victims that could corroborate those stories. And the one guy, Brian James, ends up finding that in his neighborhood is one of the priests that they are positive molested someone, like literally right down the street. So he goes to Michael Keaton, who is the editor for this Spotlight crew, the investigative team, and basically says like, well, when are we going to go out with this? Because like I'm kind of feeling like I should there's kids in my neighborhood. I feel like I got to tell them. And Michael Keaton just has this, very subtle scene where he's just like, we'll do it soon, but it's kind of an understanding that like, it's not necessarily going to be as soon as you want. And I understand that. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that is the beauty of, again, all of these characters in the Spotlight team and beyond. They all have their own internal struggle. And I think it's so well written and it's so well performed. Like Rachel McAdams, she has her grandmother, and who is Catholic, and when she publishes this article, it is going to break her grandmother's heart. And you have, Michael Keaton. You have people like Michael Keaton and not John Sterling, but
John Slattery.
John Slattery, who John Slattery is kind of, you can tell he's very uncomfortable from the start. But both him and Michael Keaton kind of have to live with, like, shit, we've gotten tips about this before, but it's not until this new boss came in
that was actually probably my one and only complaint with this movie. And I'm going to throw a spoiler alert out there now because we're getting towards the end of the movie. Is that, throughout the entire movie, they've kind of been hinting that John Slattery has something to do with, like, basically as the team is investigating, they keep coming across these people that are like, well, why are you looking into this now? We sent you tips like 5 years ago and you guys buried it. And then when they're talking to the one lawyer asking, we need names of the priests that you settled for. Right. And he's like, I sent you a list of 20 like 5 years ago. Why didn't you guys do anything with it? And because of the way that every time John Slattery is kind of like the editor above Michael Keaton's spotlight editor.
Him, right?
Yeah, they report to him. So he keeps coming to ask what's going on, and he's just kind of got this very uncomfortable attitude.
Right.
And they purposely lead you to suspect that he's the one that got those tips in the past and that buried it and hid everything behind.
Right.
But then in a spoiler alert, one of the last scenes, as they're about to put the story out, Michael Keaton reveals that he was the one he was the editor for Metro at the time and got the tips and basically buried the story because he was new, he claims, and he wasn't really sure what he was doing with it. And I thought that was kind of it. For me, it kind of invalidated John Slattery's entire character. The character was Ben Bradley, I have written down here. Just because every scene he was in, his only purpose was to mislead you from suspecting Michael Keaton, essentially.
Oh, definitely.
Which I also felt like it would have given more depth to Michael Keaton's character if we saw some scenes of him feeling uncomfortable. Because the entire time he's very gung-ho and he's like, we got to do the right thing. We got to get the story out there.
Right.
And it's not until the movie's almost over that we find out that he was the one that kind of fucked up and buried the story all those years ago.
But here's the thing. Here's why I like the film. Or here's why I like the character of Michael Keaton's that Michael Keaton plays. See, here's the thing. I mean, when we open up on the film, Michael Keaton is pushing this police numbers kind of thing, and Mark Ruffalo's character keeps saying like, it's thin. I think it's thin, and then Michael Keaton's pushing for it, and it's not until the new editor from Miami what would exactly his position be?
I guess just like
Head editor, or,
editor-in-chief really sure. Or something like that.
Yeah, editor-in-chief comes from Miami, and it's not like Michael Keaton's like, we gotta do this piece on like these kids getting, molested by priests. It's more like, hey, listen, Spotlight, you guys take like a story to write, or you guys take like a year to write a story for a newspaper. Like, you guys are pretty like disposable. How about you write this story as a follow-up? Kind of like almost like, if you don't do this, you guys can
because there's budget talks and stuff like that. People are afraid of layoffs.
About making cuts in the staff. To kind of go against your opinion, I feel like their hand was kind of forced to do that, and it's not like Michael Keaton was like, well, now let's do it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, as if he subconsciously knows that he's put this off before.
But there was also there were scenes where Michael Keaton was in the room when someone was saying, we sent those. And I mean, maybe it's just that was a character choice of him not being fazed by those comments, but I would have I think I would have liked to see him,
it's just like,
or at least a hint where I felt completely blindsided when they admitted that Michael Keaton was in Metro and he was the one that got those tips back in the day.
Right. I agree, but I feel like it wasn't exactly like him that received them. Like, he was in Metro, sure, but like also maybe, and again, it is like a thing like Michael Keaton, John Slattery, they're like the older guys there, and they've been there for 30 years, and I feel like Michael Keaton suffers from like bad memory, kind of like it was just another day on the job, and he was working
that
his
is
way
the thing
up.
He says. But then I guess just the way that it kind of invalidated John Slattery's character.
Oh, definitely,
and then it even like
he was like a red herring,
and then he does like this whole like 360 because after they have that meeting, and then the story comes out, and Liev Schreiber's character says that the is it Bishop or Cardinal Law called him and basically just wanted to say personally that he wasn't going to give a comment on the story. And Liev Schreiber is walking out at the end of the day with John Slattery's character, and he's talking about how that was a mistake. And I think he says something to the effect of like, "Oh, we're going to get him." And John Slattery's character is literally like, "You're damn right, we will." Like, so it goes from like where you thought he was someone that was trying to kill this story, was doubting the story because maybe he had ties to it. Then we find out he doesn't, and then he's like, little Boy Scout, like, yeah, you're damn right, we're gonna.
Right. Well,
which I mean, it makes sense. He's talking to his boss. I get it, but
I think John Slattery is supposed to be portrayed as somebody who rubs shoulders with those in the religious sort of, or in the Catholic like circles, and so that's why he's like,
and that is a big part of the story too. Is everyone has some kind of tie to the Catholic Church, or they just respect the Catholic Church, and no one wants to, handcuff a priest. I think that's a line they say in there somewhere.
Right, and just another note about the aesthetic that I want to get back to. this film is on the cusp of the internet. Like, the internet is there, but it's not exactly, predominant or ubiquitous as it is right now. And same with cell phones. And I like that. And it's kind of like, it calls back to like that, like the BuzzFeed and the clickbait shit that I was talking about before. Like same with cell phones. They're present, but they're used as a device in the film to sort of speed up the story. Like, oh, I'm in a cab, I'm going to tell you the notes that I just found. And, but they're not as, the cell phones are there, but they're not like as paramount as like they are in films in 2015.
Yeah.
And I really like that. One of my favorite shots is outside the Boston Globe, and it has that AOL billboard. And like,
I saw that.
It ages it so well, and it's so there's just attention to detail. But Mike is motioning that we really do want. We really, like we said before, we do want to cut back on the time that this podcast is. So I think it's time to say,
how many fingers are you?
This is bad. Okay.
Yeah, I brought on this section, but I didn't think about how many fingers I actually want to hold up, so you can go first.
All right, I'm going to go first. I've been thinking about this a lot today, and I think, now that I've got this liquid courage bumping in my system, we had a few shots, a few beers.
Oh, daddy.
I think my heart's really leaning towards 5 fingers.
5 fingers?
Yeah.
No.
I was super into this film.
5 fingers is like you have not one complaint with this movie.
I don't.
You don't have one complaint with this movie.
You've made all the complaints. I love this film. This is going to win Best Picture. I believe that this episode will probably be the most listened to because people will look back and be like, well, what did they have to say about Best Picture?
Wow.
I do think I strongly am behind this film. And this is so weird because it isn't like a cinematic film. It's literally...
It's a story film. Right. Yeah, it's not even really that visual of a film. And not that it looked bad.
It's a gorgeous, beautifully played out screenplay, and every single person that they cast to be in this film is just flawless. Like, it's just... It plays out so well. Everybody looks like exactly like they're supposed to be. I really have zero complaints. I'm pretty damn sure this is the best film I'm going to see this year. So that's where I'm going to leave it at 5 fingers.
Ooh. Well, I'm not giving it 5, I'll tell you that.
That's fine, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast and why there's 2 people doing it. Right?
Oh, shit. I want to say 4.5, but that seems high too.
All right.
But again, I got to go with 4.5.
It's that good of a film.
Yeah, I mean, the only complaint I had was, what I mentioned before with John Slattery's character and Michael Keaton, that whole mix-up. And then there was, like, only one other scene that kind of made me feel weird was that, like, Silent Night scene where, like, the choir is singing. But I understood what they were trying to do. It's basically the choir. Mark Ruffalo is seeing, I don't know if it's his kid or someone else, but he's at a church watching kids in the choir sing Silent Night during the holiday season. And they're using it really to show a passage of time during the holidays when they weren't able to report as much. And but there's also, it's Mark Ruffalo is like looking at the kids and he almost starts crying because he's just thinking about like the innocence of kids and how trusting they are in the church. I just thought it was kind of weird aesthetically, even though I understood what they were going for. But those are literally my only 2 complaints about the entire film. So yeah, I think I would have to go with the 4.5. The other thing I want to talk about is at the end, spoiler alert, except not because it's real life, is the movie ends with, right before the credits, it basically says what kind of happens, after the fact.
That made me cry too.
Yeah, that was
hard. Yeah.
I have not left the theater feeling like that in a long time. Like you just because it's talking about what happens, and then they literally they list all the towns that they were able to find these scandals in, and it's literally like, all right, here's a card that's just a screen full of towns. Right. Here's another card, another screen full of towns,
and it kept going.
And it just kept going and going and going, and you just. And it breaks your heart to see that. And it does. Like it made me feel like dirty and like guilty at the same time, even though I was 11 when this was happening. But like it strikes you with that feeling of like, oh, we should have done something about this way sooner.
Traditionally, it is a trope like cards that come come up after inspired by true events or like, you know, based on. I feel like traditionally, like, those are kind of corny and they were overplayed in the 90s, and I feel like people who do parody films kind of use those.
Yeah.
But this is the first time in a very long time that I felt like those were just, I can't think of the word right now, but it was just real. You know, like, it really played to the effect of the film.
And it was like, I mean, people could have left at that point
Right.
in the theater because there's a few cars and then there's those. And it's like, if you had somewhere to go, you could have left, but everyone was just glued
No
to
one
their
does,
seat.
yeah.
There was not a peep in the entire theater when those cars were going, besides like maybe some gasps.
Yeah,
when,
no,
like, it was
I
just like, oh,
got
God,
some
like,
gasp, yeah.
The cars just kept going and going and going.
Wow. So,
4.5 and a 5.
4.5 and a 5. What is that average out to?
I think that comes to 4 3/4.
4
Let's
3/4.
do some excellent math here again.
One of
Joe
our-
and Mike doing
one of-
7th grade
Yeah,
math.
one of our friends pointed out, they're like, oh god, like, the podcast was good, but what the you guys doing math was fucking terrible.
Yeah, 4.75. I knew it in your
So
face.
So what we're trying to do now is round up. Right? Or do you
Oh, you're just trying to get a 5 out of it.
No. We leave it at the 4.5, but do you want to start rounding up, or do you want to start rounding down, or do you want to... What do you want to do with this?
I feel like we probably have to round down because otherwise
Okay.
a 5 would come off as if we had both given it
Right.
a perfect score.
Exactly. All right, let's round down from now
All
on.
right, so we'll round down. So it's my score. It's a 4.5.
Still,
I
good
win.
score.
That's the highest score we've given so far.
All right. So 4.5, and that's where we're going to leave you off at for Spotlight. Again, I think this is something that is an essential viewing. I don't know if Mike feels the same, but
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
I think you have to see this.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely going to play a big role in the Oscars this year,
Definitely.
for sure. So
definitely.
if you care about the Oscars at all, definitely go give this a view.
Definitely. All right, so still don't know how to end these
Signing
fucking
out for How Many
episodes.
Fingers, the podcast. I'm Mike,
And I'm Joe.
and see you next week.
Hello, listeners. Mike again. You want links? You got links. You can find us on iTunes, the podcast app, and TuneIn by searching How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? You can follow us on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/HowManyFingersPodcast. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/HowManyFingersPodcast. And you can tweet us on Twitter at HMFPodcast. And if you do have suggestions for beers we should drink or synonyms for drunk that we should use, please let us know on there. And you can check out our official website at HowManyFingersPodcast.com and check out the links page on that website to find our YouTube link because we can't set a custom URL, so it's just a random splattering of alphanumeric characters. And don't forget, we'll be back next week with our drunken review of The Martian. I promise, not lying this time.